Okay, so this is the second week of January, and in such, we devote every study in January towards the new year. And we decided to talk a little bit this week about courage. Because oftentimes we begin a new year, we make resolutions, like Biga mentioned last week, we decide to make some changes, but we find that sometimes we lack in this very important virtue, which is courage. We don't pretend today to talk about the psychological aspects of fear. We will leave that to Sherry when she does her lecture here. Can't wait to hear it. Or if anybody actually wants to talk about, what is it that actually triggers fears. Neurologists are studying how courage actually has an effect on our brain, and the more we practice the habit of practicing courage, the more this actually becomes natural to us. But this is a whole nother study that we're not going to get into. We actually saw this part of the letter which was written by Paul and Timotheus to the Philippians on chapter 3, verses 13 to 14, which I absolutely find it beautiful. There are two parts to this letter here, to this verse here, that we are going to focus on as far as our study about courage is concerned. He was in prison at the time he wrote this letter to the Philippians, and he had already been there. And so here he was communicating with them. He said, "Brothers and sisters, I do not consider myself yet to have taken hold of it. But one thing I do, forgetting what is behind and straining toward what is ahead, I press on toward the goal to win the prize for which God has called me heavenward in Christ, in Jesus Christ." And so this is what we are going to focus on. We're going to come back to this message a little bit to find the profound meaning behind it and how this actually applies in a proactive and courageous action from our part, but also in paying attention to the fact that we do have some things that needs to be worked on and that there is nothing to be ashamed of. It's a process. We have already learned in Spiritism that our spiritual progress is a gradual one. Nobody's going to come here and pretend, or in any religion, that just because we have embraced a philosophy of life, an understanding of what being religious means, that we are going to change overnight, that we are going to be able to conquer everything that hinders our steps behind. And this is basically what we're going to talk about today. Let's watch this short video. It's actually an ad, a commercial for CNN, but that's going to give basis for our study.
You're aware of your condition and how well you deal with it. What is that inner thing that keeps you going?
How do you overcome your fear? How do you say, I'm not going to be afraid? Where do you find the courage?
I get through, and I think I'm a person who represents A, you never give up, you find a way. If something really is important to your heart, you look and see what's inside yourself, and you find a way.
I don't want this to be the end. So whether it's, running the marathon or walking the marathon or crawling the marathon and being the last one across, I'm okay with that. I didn't say I'm in it. But I didn't define it tonight. I want to be more stronger.
Just continue to push. And so every time things come on, I always say to myself, push past the pain. It's going to be okay. So I know today that no matter what, I can push past the pain.
But I really look at my life as blessed. Sure, I've had challenges and terrible things happen and loss of dear people and all that. But I really think that if we had less fear and resistance, like a stratified thing to death, life would be happier.
That if you are unsatisfied with whatever conditions, circumstances are in your life, then you have a choice to be able to go and create the life that you want, and to be able to go and make the decision to go and do it. And things aren't going to be perfect when you start, but just go and choose that, say that, hey, I'm capable of living more.
Sometimes I say, why me? Why have I had such a hard life? Why have my siblings died? Why does it not go away? And then I think again, why not me? Better me than a kid who already has stress on his life. Or better me than a baby who wouldn't understand it and who has a better chance of hurting one. So I think, why me? And then I think, why not me?
So we watch a very short video with a very profound message. Everyday people. There was a really cool song in the 90s that said, we're everyday people. That's us. We are everyday people who are capable of doing amazing things, of conquering amazing obstacles, of overcoming difficulties that if we see it, if we were able to see 10 years from now the kind of difficulties that we might endure, we might say, no, I couldn't do it. When the time comes, we do. We have the strength within us to be able to conquer every fear, to conquer every obstacle, to make some pretty life-changing options that we have. The letter written by Paul to the Philippians truly brings out what we wish to share, with basis on the Spiritist teachings, in giving us a moment to reflect about ourselves. Are we courageous? Do we believe in ourselves? Because one of the things that Paul did after converting, he basically said, hold on you guys, we're not starting, we're not going to restart. There you go. He said, I can do all this through him who gives me strength. It is a pretty profound phrase, a statement that deposits every faith and hope in a courageous statement on our Lord above. For him to have said this, he's basically saying that he is able to do anything with the strength in mind from the good Spirit, from the Holy Spirit, if we want to call it that way, from our Master Jesus. And then we started to think about sometimes when shove comes to push. Is that the sentence they say?
That's pretty good.
Yeah, it's good, right? Or is it push come to shove? I'm dyslexic. Good enough. You know, when life comes and gives us a little kick, pushing us forward, do we have this belief? Are we able to do everything through him who gives us strength? Do we truly believe? Can we deposit our faith in Jesus? Are we Christians? What does it mean to be Christian? Spiritism is religion. It's based on the teachings of Jesus Christ. Therefore, we are Christians. We study its philosophical aspect. We study its scientific aspect, as we do with Lazarus. Yet we find that everything has an ethical consequence. And then we start questioning ourselves. Do we know what our fears are? Do we lack courage to take an active stand in our lives? When we have had enough, be it in a difficult relationship where we are being abused mentally, physically, emotionally, do we have the courage to look at ourselves in the mirror and say, I am of a divine essence and I deserve better than this? Is there a difference between a positive, courageous act and one that is defined in an aggressive way? Do we understand the difference between what being courageous means in a positive and negative way? Because some people feel that to be courageous, you have to be aggressive. You have to offend people. You don't turn the other cheek. And then we are going to find later on in our study that to turn a cheek actually takes a whole lot more courage than that of attacking. The question is, how do we see ourselves? So I'm going to share with you guys that when I was a young girl, I had a little nightgown. It was gray, and it had a bowl in it. You know, he had like the smoke coming out of his nose, and he was in that position. It kind of goes like this, ready to charge. And it was my zodiac sign. I'm a Taurus. And the characteristic of Taurus that were written in it was proud, hard-headed, and courageous. The first two is accurate. I've always been proud and hard-headed. That was pretty good. But the courageous fact, you know, as a young girl, you build your reality. Sometimes a simple thing like that gives a child strength. And I used to believe that, yep, I am tough, I am courageous, I can do anything. But life comes at us and we grow up and things are not as easy as it seems or simple. We are faced with fears. There come certain situations that test us. And I, at times, wish I could go back and hold on to that image, or even the nightgown, which wouldn't fit today, probably be like a really tight t-shirt. But it was an amazing little thing to have. That's how I used to believe that I was. Proud, hard-headed, and courageous. I didn't know that being hard-headed and proud wasn't a good thing. At that time, I thought it was a pretty good thing. And sometimes it can be a positive thing when we decide that we want something and we persevere on that. But in reality, we are going to find as we grow up that we sometimes lack the necessary courage to overcome obstacles, to take a look within ourselves and find out, what is it that I need to change? What is it that I'm attracting to my life that is no longer good? Why is it that I attract certain situations that keep on repeating? Is it a lesson that I need to learn? Or is it something that I need to modify within myself so that I attract other positive things into my life? And this is something that we start to question. Do we trust God above all things in our lives? Do we truly believe that we have reincarnated here and we have the good spirits beside us, guiding us, encouraging us? It's things that we need to ponder and talk about. We start out with our study based on Paul, and then some everyday people, and then back to Paul again, because Paul was a very courageous and sincere man. Not only was he courageous before his conversion, but he was also pretty courageous afterwards. And we see two different types of courage taking place when Paul converted. First, we see the man who was proud, who defended the old law. He was right in his mind in the way that he wished to persecute those who were going against the Old Testament. Who is this revolutionary man that is taking over? Stephen was the first one that he decided to persecute and even and kill for what he believed to be right. And sometimes it takes a lot of courage for us to be able to see that sometimes things are not that way. When he was able to finally see the light, which literally blinded him for a few days, and then he was healed when he met with Ananias, his courage took a whole different side. Because to be able to spread the gospel, the evangelical family that he was trying to grow, took a lot of guts. Misunderstandings, stoning, offenses, every kind of difficult situations Paul endured for decades. Visiting towns, writing the letters, being imprisoned, being stoned. Now people will look at it and say, man, he was a coward. He didn't stand up for himself. Is it that now? And this is something that we are going to see. There's different types of reality. But then Paul was pretty amazing, because people will say, yeah, I'm not Paul. I could never make the kind of conversion he did. But then Paul shows us a human side, something that we can relate to when he stated, I do not understand what I do. For what I want to do, I do not do, but what I hate, I do. For I have the desire to do what is good, but I cannot carry it out. This is a letter written to the Romans. We as Christians sometimes have this kind of conflict because it's a gradual process. It's hard sometimes to remove from within that which still hinders us behind. Maybe intolerance, maybe impatience. My God, I can't believe I just acted that way. I don't want to be like that anymore, yet I still am. And so I really love the example of Paul, because he also had these conflicts as well, showing us how approachable he really is. He's not a far-off image that we can't mirror ourselves on. In reality, we see ourselves in Paul as well. Who here says this sometimes in different words? Thank you, Elcio. Yeah, a lot of us sometimes will have that moment where, like, my God, I just really dropped the ball. Yeah, dropped the ball today. Is that true? Is that the same?
Yeah.
I'm full of it today, full of new phrases. Sorry. So it's good to see this type of frailties, the fragility, the frailties of our souls. Yet Susanna said something one time that always stuck with me. We're not evil. We're frail. We have some kind of weaknesses within us that doesn't necessarily. Paul said that.
more frail than Eve.
We're more frail than Eve. And Susanna repeated it, and I'm giving her credit for that. Good enough. You know, we do have these frailties within us, these weaknesses within us. And it's okay to have them. In reality, they will say that it's perfect that we are imperfect, because that's our goal, perfection. Everything is as it should be. How would we know wrong from right if we didn't learn from our own mistakes? What merit would we have after being transformed, after being able to make some kind of moral transformation within? We look at ourselves today and we see ourselves in a whole new light, hopefully, after 5, 10, 2, even maybe a year of finding something that resonates within us, that connects us to this higher power above, showing us the guiding light, where exactly we are supposed to be. Where are we destined to? Are we making an active movement to make this kind of changes within? Better yet, do we have the courage to do that? Emmanuel, the spirit author of the book, Paul and Stephen, will tell us that Paul was much more than a predestined individual to make the changes that he did. He actually brings Paul closer to us again when he says that Paul was an accomplisher who strived daily to reach the light, walking in the darkness of the world to meet the Master, who made himself heard at the crossroads of his life. Now, this is something that we can find, that we also are responsible for this type of accomplishment for ourselves. The Master called upon Paul from his realm of immortal radiance. The Master calls upon us too. The Master allowed Paul to fumble in the darkness of the human experience, yet Paul replied, "Lord, what would you have me do?" If Jesus appeared before us, would we have the courage to say, "Lord, what will you have me do?" Do we have the courage to deposit our entire faith in Him? Because the answer might be a tough one. Christ, what would you like me to do with my life? This is a pretty important thing that we see in the teachings from Paul. Because when he asked that, he put his entire faith in Jesus. And not even wanting to know the answer. Because if he stated that, he was ready to receive the answer. The problem is that we also fumble in the darkness of our human experiences. It's normal. We haven't acquired the light yet. And although I like to joke that we are kind of like little fireflies, we turn on and off, on and off, on and off. We turn it on. We have the light. And so while we're still trembling, fumbling, falling, getting up, scraped, we are walking. But are we listening to the calling as well? And what is our answer? Paul said, "Lord, what would you have me do?" What is our answer? Because he's constantly calling upon us. Emmanuel will tell us that between Jesus and Paul, there was an abyss which the apostle crossed over in decades of ongoing, redemptive, daily type of activity and struggle. It wasn't an overnight accomplishment. In Heaven and Hell, the book by Allan Kardec, will bring several testimony of spirits, but in one part of the book, it will say that progress is a gradual movement. We have to be kind with ourselves to realize that we are not going to be able to conquer over the old man within us in 1 year, because that's sometimes the New Year resolution. I will become a better person. I will be more loving towards my loved ones. I will practice patience more often. And on the first day, we will probably scream at somebody who cuts us off in traffic. It's okay. It happens. It's part of who we are. If we looked at Paul and his struggle towards his redemptive path, do you think you would have the courage to take the same path? Truth be told, anybody who answers upon the call from Jesus on becoming a better Christian is going through that too, in different manners. Sometimes we are misunderstood. Sometimes we are offended. Sometimes we are stoned with indifference, injustices. It's just a different scenario according to how much each and every one of us can take, because nothing is put upon us that we cannot withstand. Paul's eyes gazed toward the future, toward the prize, which is why he said, forgetting what is behind and straining toward what is ahead, I press on toward the goal, the future reward that Spiritism promises us on a life that is well lived, with the duties and responsibilities that each and every one of us have individually and collective. God has called me heavenward in Christ Jesus. But then there's something even more profound on this phrase that we have to understand, because Paul's courage also had to do with overcoming the old man. Wasn't him the one who said, I won the good battle, I overcame myself? It's becoming better than we were. Because when he says, forgetting what is behind, he's basically also talking about not paying attention to the wrongful doings that we did in the past that sometimes paralyzes us in our path, with the guilt conscious, with the guilt feelings of what we did in the past that was wrong. We don't need to worry about that right now. It's done. But we can cover a multitude of wrongdoings with love, as we were instructed by Jesus. We made mistakes. We might make mistakes. We will make mistakes. But we can't let that hinder our steps. We need to move on forward. We need to keep on going. Every step we take forward, even if we take two backwards, we are making progress. And we have to believe in our ability to do that. If Paul decided to focus on the persecutions and the killings and the hateful crimes he did in defending the Old Testament, do we think that he would be able to do all the wonderful work after converting? Let's think about that for a second. How many of us here remember things that we've done in this lifetime that wasn't exactly a good thing, and we suffer? We don't believe that we are worthy, that we are deserving of new chances, of a better life? How many people live like that, enclosed in their own guilt, where they don't allow themselves to flourish and move forward with the eyes on the prize waiting for us ahead? This is what reincarnation is for. God's love is shown, is one of the ways that is shown in the proof that we have reincarnation, where we are giving countless times to get it right. That doesn't mean that we keep doing wrong in this lifetime. It means that we make an effort to make it right. And if for some reason we get to the finish line, not completing the task, we rest assured that we will receive a new opportunity to make it right. Now, the Gospel according to Spiritism brings us several lessons about moral courage, about the courage of faith, about having to have this courage of faith to understand a lot of what we go through in our lives, reminding us what Spiritism comes to do, accomplishing what Jesus actually said about what Terry said about the promised consoler. Here we see Spiritism brings a tool of encouragement, the knowledge of things that enables humans to know where we have come from, where we are going, and why we are on earth. We are called upon to try and see things from a higher point of view. We have to understand a little bit about this in order to be encouraged to continue on the difficult road that sometimes we find ahead of us. The perspective of happiness and future reward that awaits us should give us patience, resignation, and courage needed to follow our pathway to the end. That's what Paul saw. That's why he was moving forward, leaving what was hindering him behind. When the Gospel according to Spiritism is open, we will almost likely find a word of encouragement or courage, where they talk about perseverance. There's always something in it that brings our attention that this is a much needed virtue for us to be able to have new realizations and modifications from within. We start believing in ourselves. Perhaps I am destined to greater things. Because if my source is of a divine essence, I am a divine being. How many people here truly believe that? Show of hands? Sometimes we don't believe it. Sometimes we questioned. When am I going to have my happy ending? When am I going to be able to go through and end this suffering? When is it going to end? Some people suffer so much that they can't wait to die. They can't wait to see life being over. Spiritism comes and talks about the future rewards for those who wait with patience and resignation. There is a lesson that talks about obedience and resignation. Obedience, how does it go? Being the recognition of the mind, and resignation is when the heart recognizes what is expected of us. And so it's a pretty profound teaching that we have. Emmanuel also participated in the messages that were given in the Gospel according to Spiritism. He was one of the spirits in 1860 who delivered a message in which he said that moral courage is needed to overcome oneself than to overcome other people. He says, vices such as selfishness is the monster that devours all minds. And so when he talks about moral courage needed more than overcoming other people, but for overcoming oneself, there are so many little monsters that we have to face in modifying whom we are. Sometimes we don't want to look within. It's scary. Scary monster. It's true. It's scary sometimes for anybody who has had the courage to seek a psychologist and see what's really targeting the issue. Sherry will say it's a tough road, no, Sherry? Until you get to the resolution, until you get to the healing, it's a very tough process to go through. And one must have courage in order to do so, in order to overcoming oneself. And here he's talking clearly about the aspect of responsibility, about the aspect of duty, of self-betterment. For courage, it's truly necessary for us to be able to have the key to open what's inside and find out how to truly take responsibility for our lives. On chapter 17 of the Gospel according to Spiritism, there is a chapter entitled Be Perfect. And on item 6, there is a beautiful passage that talks about duty. Duty. Duty is an individual's moral obligation, first toward himself or herself, and toward others immediately thereafter. Interestingly enough, the benevolent spirit Lazar will come and say that duty is a practical summary of all moral speculation. It is the courage of the soul who confronts the distress of life's struggle. It is both strict and yielding. It's ready to adapt itself to diverse complications. It remains unbending before temptations. It's amazing. We should read this entire chapter on duty because right here we found the magic potion. It's pretty a beautiful message because he continues on saying that humans should love duty, not because it preserves them against life's troubles. Humankind cannot avoid those. It's true. He said it's because it provides the soul with the strength it needs for its development. And here's something that we find, because we will see many great examples of people who walked the talk, or talked the walk, or walked the walk. Here we go again, making up stuff. Walk the talk. I love Terry right here with Viga because they give me this mediumship grammatical lessons here. So, how much courage can someone gather in order to perform their duty and responsibility? There was a pretty amazing person that was named Time's second most influential person of the world, who was born in 1997 in Pakistan. In 2009, she wrote an anonymous BBC blog about life under the Taliban. She was appointed by her father. She attended school. And so she anonymously would write on this blog to BBC. And then 2009 and 10, she revealed her identity in TV interviews and documentary. She won the International Children's Peace Prize. Actually, she was nominated and won. And then in 2012, she was shot in an assassination attempt by the Taliban. After all of this, she became a Nobel Peace Prize nominee and was named one of the Times Magazine most influential person of the year. Here we have Malala. Malala is just a young girl. She's everyday people. What would have happened if this person here had silence instead of have been outspoken and driven? The Prime Minister of Britain said that she's an icon of courage and hope. And today she's recognized as such. She's not even 18. She's a child who attends school, has her own, teenage stuff, maybe dreams, hopes. She fights with her two brothers. But one of the things that she will not let down, she will not stand down for the need of child education, girls' education. Standing before the United Nations, she delivered a speech that has been seen millions of times, encouraging, enabling people to hear voices that never had been spoken before through one voice. She allowed millions to have been heard. She goes on to say, one child, one teacher, one book, one pen can change the world. And so she says, they thought that bullets would silence it, but they failed. And then out of that silence came thousands of voices. Now, she was shot. A plate put in her skull. Yet she didn't stand down. That's courage. How many of us would have the courage to do that? Because even though she moved to another country, and when she regained her faculties, she continued speaking out. That's a lot of courage. Anybody else would have been terrified to stand up again and talk. It's about the moral courage, about carrying out a duty and responsibility. Who knows what her reincarnatory plan was? We know right now what ours is. And so we have to take on full responsibility and duty for our own lives. The book Around the Master will say that moral courage is one of the indispensable conditions for those who wish to follow in the steps of the Master. And we add, saying that it's also needed for anybody who wishes to begin or continue the difficult work of inner transformation. After all, we were already warned by Jesus when he said that he was sending us out like sheep among wolves. It's the current Christian's position in today's age. Therefore, be as shrewd as a snake and innocent as dove. Such expression brings us much clarity about where we are today and what was awaiting us as we reincarnated. Would he send us out here like sheep among wolves without some kind of protection? Because Terry talked about this here. The abundance, the amount of good spirits who look after us, who encourage us, who try to influence us towards making the right decision, of having the courage to make the right decisions, because that sometimes takes courage too, to make the right decision and not the wrong one. He taught us also that in order for us to come back and be shrewd as snake and innocent like doves, there was something needed also. Because to be a Christian, it means that not only do we have courage, but we also have a strong attitude in our conviction. He would say, let your statement be yes, yes, or no, no. Who here knows about the passage when Jesus expelled the merchants from the temple? Now, a lot of people will say that Jesus went there and started throwing tables around, chairs, kicking the animals. That didn't happen. That doesn't go in accordance with the sweetness, the loving attitude of the Master, but he was firm when he needed to be. And people listened because he had moral authority. Now, in sending us out like sheep with wolves here, he said that not a single hair of our head is unnumbered. He said, the very hair of your head are all numbered. Look at the kind of security he provides us. when he sends us out into the world, fear not, therefore, you are of more value than any sparrow. He's talking about our divine essence. He's giving us the security to know that everything is under control, is being accounted for. We are not sent out into this difficult world to tend for ourselves. Whoever therefore shall confess me before men, him I will confess also before my Father which is in heaven. Now we're not going to get into the aspect of not really embracing and being a Christian, like Peter in essence denied Christ 3 times, right? Wasn't anybody remember that lesson when Peter denied him before the rooster croaked? Is that how you say that, John? Yeah, thank you, correct. Well, whatever else. And when the rooster did make that noise, is that better? Peter remembered that Christ had told him that he would deny him 3 times before that happened. And then Peter started crying because he remembered what the Master told him. And Peter came out to be an amazing, amazing disseminator of the gospel afterwards. And so we see here many of the examples in the gospel calling upon us to become strong, to have fortitude, to be courageous in the dissemination of the message that we believe in as well. He also reminds us of our divine source. When he said, "Be perfect as your heavenly Father is perfect." In order to overcome the difficulties that arise in our life, to overcoming our frailties, we must have determination and willingness. But most of all, we must believe in this divine source which we all come from. It's important to realize that moral courage is very different than the kind of cowardice courage where people use aggressiveness. Malala, when she was questioned by Jon Stewart what she would do if the Taliban came calling back, she said, "I will tell him how important education is, and that even I want education for your children too. And I will tell him, that's what I want to tell you. Now, do what you want. Fighting the Taliban is important, but through peace, dialogue, and education. The proud would see turning the other cheek as weakness, which Malala did. She turned the other cheek. As a matter of fact, CNN has an article, Malala turns the other cheek. It's pretty cool, right? That an article would be written that way. And she talks about this. She talks about the need of making modifications and changes, but through peace, through love, through dialogue. And then she says she will tell them, do what you want to do, meaning shoot me again if you must. That's how she is living her life. One of the things that we wanted to bring here before reading a final message entitled Courageously from the book, The Living Spring, there is a gentleman who discarnated in the beginning of November. Do some of you here know about the non-profit organization that was founded by the world-renowned medium Divaldo Franco in Bahia? It's called Mention of the Way. If you don't know, do look it over. It's in one of the most poor and dangerous neighborhood in Bahia. When you walk, when you drive, because in reality it's a mega city, when you drive through it, it's almost as if it's a materialized spiritual colony because of the kind of work that is done by Divaldo and was also founded by Nilson, who was his friend for decades. For 60 years they worked together with this organization that provided over 600 adoption of children. And not just that, they actually offer classes, food, every type of nourishment for over 30,000 families a year. It's my God, speechless. 5,000 a day, so you have an idea. Well, Nilson got cancer, and for 2 years he suffered a lot because it was a prostate and it went up to the stomach area, and so the sweetest man was going through this cancer. And those who were close to him and talked to us said that every day he wouldn't blame God, he would say, Jesus, please just give me the strength for one more day. And every day he would do that. Give me courage to face this just one more day. Well, After 2 years battling out, he died last November. And on the 31st of December, he came back and wrote a message through Divaldo Franco. And the message is beautiful because it talks about how there is life after death and how amazing it is to find people that went on before us. But that there's something that he said that stuck with me. This is what he said. Where is it? He said, "No one will ever regret for having acted with mercy, compassion, and love." And when he said that, it really struck me, because in our daily lives, it's really hard for us to act with mercy, compassion, and love. And then I started doing an exercise in finding out what is it that sometimes keeps us from being loving and merciful. And then we started doing the study about courage. And then they talk about moral cowardice and how it takes more courage to be merciful, indulgent, and benevolent. And I started doing the math, and I said, wow, how amazing, because we have the book Heaven and Hell with all of the testimony from the spirits who left already. But here we have a modern day person who discarnated, and the spirit comes back to say what he encountered on the other side. Because one of the things that they have dealt with for over 60 years are accusations, offenses of every sort. Divaldo has been accused of using his mediumship to make himself famous throughout the world. And they have no idea, they've never been in that non-profit organization to find out the extensive of that work. But they always say, silence, perseverance, work. That's all they do. And it's a pretty powerful, encouraging message for us as well. We are going to finalize asking ourselves, what was Paul's courage based on? What is Malala's courage based on? The six everyday people that we saw that battled cancer, that climbed a mountain, completely amputated, what is it that drove them to conquer their fears? And what is necessary for us to conquer our own? We're going to finish with a message entitled Courageously. Be on your guard, stand firm in the faith, act courageously, be strong. This is the first letter to the Corinthians. Be on guard in the daily struggle. Stand firm in the faith when faced with a storm. Act courageously in every difficult situation. Be strong in suffering in order to receive its lesson of love. Still today, Paul's advice to the Corinthians is clothed in surprising appropriateness. In order for us to receive the substantial qualities of spiritual progress, we must have the courage of those who trust in the Lord and in themselves. A flood of unreasonable tears is worthless before a wrong that has been committed. It is our duty to regret for any mistakes we may have made, but to continuously feel sorry about it is wasting our time. We should redeem it. Of course, deliberate wrongdoing is a crime. However, a thoughtless wrong is a valuable lesson, as long as we incline ourselves to the Lord's designs. Without moral resistance in the storm of purifying conflicts, even the noblest heart falls apart. Therefore, we cannot rest in our endeavor of spiritual growth. Of course, we will stumble many times. Of course, we will get scratched by thorns along the way. Our situation will be regrettable. However, whenever we demand a soft bandage of undue consolation, thus halting our journey to the Almighty. Christians are not students that allow themselves undeserved rest. Disciples of a master who served whoever needed him until his final testimony on the cross, they must toil at sowing and harvesting the infinite good, being under guard, helping and acting courageously. And with this, we leave this message again, to stay and stick in our minds, to understand, as it was said, that it's okay to make mistakes, but that we must press on forward, forgetting what is behind, leaving what is behind toward the goal, toward the prize that awaits us. Let us always remember this, and if needed, seek the guidance of the good Spirit so that we may be encouraged through prayer, through meditation, through enlightening reading. Let us always, always remind ourselves of our divine essence so that our courage doesn't become weakened by the outside forces, the moral cowardice. Let us always remember to be mindful of that. With that, we open for questions and answers. I thank you guys for your time listening. Thank you.